I'm Ethan, 25. I work part-time as a home repair technician. Leaky pipes, stuck doors, busted light switches. Nothing too glamorous, just enough to keep the rent paid and gas in the truck. Most of my clients are suburban families or landlords with too many properties and too little patience. So when my phone buzzed late one evening with a request from a private number, I almost let it go to voicemail. But the job notes caught my attention. Urgent luxury property outside city, discretion preferred. Normally those words would make me wary, but something about it felt different. Maybe it was the way the dispatcher lowered her voice when she said she asked for someone young, competent, and polite. Said she doesn't like strangers in her home. I figured I fit the bill. The drive took me past the usual neighborhoods and into hills I rarely had reason to visit. The houses got bigger, gates got taller, trees were thicker here, and everything felt a little too quiet. By the time I turned onto the gravel path leading to her property, dusk had already faded. Her house was lit with warm amber lights against smooth gray stone and tall glass windows. Modern, elegant, intimidating. I killed the engine and stepped out into the night. The air smelled faintly of jasmine and freshly watered plants. I hadn't even reached the front door before it opened. She stood there barefoot on polished wood, framed by the soft light behind her. Isabel, older than me, sure around 40, maybe a little more, but the kind of woman who didn't try to look younger. She didn't have to. Her hair was pinned loosely, her blouse tucked into tailored pants. Everything about her looked like it cost more than my monthly rent. But it wasn't just how she looked. It was how she moved, how she didn't smile right away, how her eyes stayed on mine longer than necessary. "You must be Ethan," she said, voice calm but rich. "You're later than I expected." "Traffic was shut," I replied, suddenly unsure of myself. "Sorry about that." She stepped aside and motioned for me to come in. "It's all right, come." The inside of her house was silent, no TV, no music, no dog barking in the distance, just the sound of my boots against her floor and the soft ticking of some hidden wall clock. She walked ahead of me slowly, like she knew I was watching. The scent of her perfume hit me halfway down the hallway, subtle but expensive. I couldn't name it, but it stayed in the back of my mind, distracting. "The dimmer in the guest bathroom's acting up," she said over her shoulder. "It's probably nothing." I nodded, pulling my tool bag closer to my side. "I'll take a look." She leaned against the doorway while I got to work. Normally, clients walk off, they check emails, feed their pets, pretend I don't exist. But not her. She stayed close, too close, watching me kneel, unscrew the panel, test the voltage. "You're good at this," she said quietly. "You look like someone who fixes things." I chuckled, unsure if that was a compliment. "It's just what I do." "Do you like it? I mean, it's a buff, but is it what you want?" she asked, her voice almost too soft. That caught me off guard. No client ever asked me that. I shrugged. "Still figuring that out, I guess." She didn't say anything to that, just stood there while I tightened the last screw and flipped the dimmer back on. The lights glowed steady. "All set," I said, standing up. She tilted her head slightly. "So fast. I was hoping you'd stay a little longer." I forced a polite smile. "If there's anything else broken, I can take a quick look." "Not broken," she said, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Just quiet here." That silence hung between us, heavy, not awkward exactly, just loaded with something I couldn't name. She didn't offer me a check, didn't mention payment, just thanked me and walked me to the door. As I stepped out, she touched my arm gently, just for a second. "Ethan," she said, "you're very composed. I like that." I gave a small laugh, too unsure to respond with anything meaningful. She watched me as I walked back to my truck. Even with the engine running, I could still feel the weight of her gaze. Driving back, I kept replaying her voice, the way she said my name, the way she stood too close, the perfume. It was just a service call, nothing more. At least that's what I told myself. After that first night at Isabel's place, I expected it to be over. One strange, quiet evening. But it didn't end there. A few days later, she called again. "Hi, Ethan," she said, like we were already familiar. "There's a small drip under the kitchen sink. Nothing urgent, but if you're free, Her voice had this calm pull to it, like she never rushed, never chased anything. I told her I'd be by the next morning. The truth was I had other jobs lined up, but something about the way she asked made me shift things around without thinking. The kitchen sink wasn't dripping. Not really. It looked like she'd placed a glass there just to make it seem like it had. The pipes were bone dry. Still, I crouched down, tool bag open, pretending to diagnose an invisible issue. She stood nearby again, barefoot, mug in hand, dressed like she was halfway to yoga and halfway to a photo shoot. Not in a try-hard way, just effortless. "I hope I'm not keeping you from more important things," she said casually. "Not at all," I lied. She leaned on the counter beside me. "I liked having you here last time." I glanced up briefly and caught her looking, not at what I was fixing, at me. After a few more moments, she asked if I wanted coffee. It was barely mid-morning, so I said, "Sure." She handed me a cup that looked like it belonged in some interior design magazine and sat across from me at the table while I pretended to tinker with my phone. "Do you always keep things so professional?" she asked suddenly, the edge of a smile pulling at her lips. I wasn't sure how to answer her that. "I mean, it's a job. I try to do it right." She tilted her head slightly. "But you're not just about the job, are you?" I laughed lightly, mostly to buy time. "I don't know what you mean." Her smile deepened just enough to suggest she did. After that, it became a pattern. Every couple of days, she'd find something else that needed fixing. A bulb flickering in the hallway, a door hinge squeaking, a drawer sticking a little. All things she probably could have handled herself or hired someone else for. But every time, she called me. Every time, she offered coffee or wine. Every time she watched, our conversations drifted more into personal territory. She asked about my family, if I was seeing anyone, if I always looked so serious when I worked. I gave vague answers, not because I had something to hide, but because I didn't know what any of this was yet. Her tone was always light, teasing. She had a way of making everything sound like it had another meaning. Even when she talked about the weather or how quiet the house felt, it came with this undercurrent, like she was inviting me to read between the lines. Once I was rewiring a faulty outlet in her study when she walked in and said, "You know, you should stop being so professional all the time." I looked up at her from the floor. "Is that a complaint?" "Just an observation," she replied, sipping from a glass of red wine. "You act like someone's always watching you." I chuckled, trying to focus back on the wires. "Old habit, I guess." "You're allowed to be off duty sometimes, Ethan." The way she said my name always lingered in the room. That night after I left, I sat in my truck longer than I needed to, just thinking. The job was done in under an hour, but it stayed with me like I'd been there all day. Her perfume, the wine glass, that smirk when she said I was too professional. I kept hearing her voice in my head, seeing her expression when she tilted her head and looked at me, like she already knew what I was feeling. That night, lying in bed, I tried to distract myself with my phone, music, anything. But my thoughts kept circling back to her. Isabel, her eyes, her laugh, the way she always stood just close enough to make it hard to ignore the space between us. I told myself nothing was happening, just tension in the air, just imagination. But when she texted me the next morning, "I think the thermostat's acting up. Can you stop by?" I didn't even hesitate before replying, "Sure." The next time Isabel called, it wasn't about anything broken. I was just about to head home after a long day when my phone buzzed. I figured she'd ask me to check a light fixture or a drafty window again, but this time her tone was different. "Don't bring your tools tonight," she said almost playfully. "Come for dinner, not work." I paused. "Dinner?" "Yes," she said simply. "I cook too, you know. It's not all just run in silk blouses." I laughed nervously. "All right, should I wear something not covered in sawdust?" "That would be appreciated," she said, then added, "Ethan, you can just be yourself." It was that last part that got me. Be yourself. I wasn't even sure who I was around her anymore, just her repair guy or something more she hadn't said out loud yet. I showered, shaved, threw on a clean shirt, and second-guessed the whole thing the entire drive there. It didn't feel like a date, but it didn't feel like it wasn't either. Her house looked the same from the outside, quiet, elegant, slightly intimidating. But as soon as she opened the door, everything felt warmer. She wasn't dressed like usual. No sleek blouse or structured pants, just a soft, dark sweater that slipped off one shoulder and loose linen pants that swayed slightly as she walked. She was barefoot again, her hair down, no makeup, or at least none that looked obvious. "You're right on time," she said, giving me a small smile. I like that. Inside, the table was already set. 2 plates, a bottle of red wine uncorked, candles flickering low in tall holders. Soft jazz played from somewhere hidden. It was intimate without trying too hard, like she'd done this 100 times but still cared about every detail. We ate slowly, pasta with grilled vegetables, warm bread, some kind of sauce I couldn't name but definitely had cream in it. She poured the wine herself and leaned in just enough to brush my hand when she set the glass down. Conversation started light. Food, weather, the weird kinds of clients I'd met over the years. Then it shifted. She told me she'd been married once for nearly a decade. It ended quietly, she said, swirling her wine. Not with a bang, just silence. He stopped seeing me. I stopped caring. I didn't know what to say, so I just listened. "I built this place thinking it would be a fresh start," she continued. "But a house this size doesn't mean anything when you live in it alone." She said it so plainly, so matter of fact. It hit harder than any dramatic confession would have. "I guess that's why I keep finding things for you to fix," she said with a faint smile. "Not because they're broken, but because I like having someone here, someone who listens." I nodded slowly. "I get that." She raised an eyebrow. "Do you?" I hesitated, then told her what I hadn't really said out loud before, that I'd started this job because I didn't know what else to do, that I felt like I was floating, trying to make ends meet while everyone else seemed to be climbing ladders and building something. "I don't know where I'm going yet," I admitted, "but being here with you, it doesn't feel aimless." There was a pause, not heavy, just still. Our eyes met, and we didn't look away this time. She leaned back in her chair slightly, letting the silence stretch. Her hand traced the rim of her wine glass slowly, like she was thinking something over. Then she said, "You know, this doesn't make sense, right?" "I know," I said softly. "And you know what people would think." "Yeah." She stood slowly, walked around the table and stopped in front of me. I stayed seated, barely breathing. Her hand touched my jaw lightly, like she was testing something. How close she could get, how far I'd let her go. Then she kissed me, soft, slow, measured, like we'd both been holding that moment back for too long. It didn't feel rushed. It felt inevitable. When she pulled back, she didn't say anything, just looked at me like she was waiting to see what I'd do next. I stood. She turned and started walking upstairs without a word, no dramatic glances, no invitation spoken aloud. I followed. The upstairs hallway was dim, lit only by the warm glow of recessed lights that traced the walls like quiet signals. I followed Isabel without a word, not because I didn't know what to say, but because something about the way she walked told me this wasn't a moment for words. Her bare feet made no sound on the hardwood. The sweater she wore slipped slightly as she reached the bedroom door, revealing more of her shoulder than before. She paused just for a second, then turned the handle and stepped inside. I lingered in the doorway for a moment, suddenly aware of everything. My heartbeat, the soft hum of the house, the warmth rising up my neck. She turned back to look at me. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice quieter than ever. I nodded. "Yeah." She stepped closer, and again her fingertips brushed my jaw. This time there was no hesitation. We kissed deeper now, hungrier, like the air between us had finally been cleared. I felt her hand curl into the back of my shirt, pulling me toward her. Everything about the way she moved was confident, deliberate, like she knew exactly what she wanted and had simply waited for me to realize it too. She led me to the bed. The sheets were soft, white, barely rumpled, like the rest of her house, put together with purpose, but lived in just enough to feel real. The air in the room had changed. It wasn't just warm, it was charged. I could feel the tension in the way she moved, the way her hands found mine, steady and firm. She didn't ask again if I was sure. She already knew. As clothes came off slowly, quietly, nothing about it felt rushed. Her touch was a mix of exploration and experience. She didn't rush to fill the silence. She let it exist, let it breathe. And in that silence, everything said more than words ever could. There was no loud music, no dimming lights, no choreographed passion, just the steady rhythm of breath, of hands, of skin. Her kiss was fire and calm all at once. I could feel the years in her, years of being wanted and then forgotten, of being admired from afar, but not truly seen. And in that moment, I wanted nothing more than to make her feel seen, present, desired. It wasn't like anything I'd known before, not fast or careless. It was deliberate, gentle where it needed to be, fierce when it mattered. She didn't speak much, but when she did, her voice dropped into a whisper so soft it pulled me in like a tide. We moved together in quiet rhythm, not chasing anything, just living in it. Every glance, every touch felt earned, like this had been building long before we ever stepped into that bedroom. Afterward, we didn't speak. We didn't need to. She pulled the covers up over us and tucked her head against my shoulder, like it was the most natural thing in the world. My arm wrapped around her, and I stared at the ceiling, wide awake. Her breathing slowed. I felt the rise and fall of her chest against me, the faint scent of her still clinging to my skin. The world outside her bedroom disappeared. No quiet bomb, no city, no gap in age or reason or logic, just the quiet of that room, the softness of her hand resting lightly against my side. At some point, I must have drifted off too, because when I woke up, it was still dark outside, but everything felt different. I looked at her, sleeping beside me, calm, peaceful, a faint smile on her lips, like whatever haunted her before had taken the night off. And I felt it. Not regret or confusion, just this quiet shift inside me, like a line had been crossed and there was no going back. Like I'd stepped into something I didn't fully understand, but didn't want to leave. My phone buzzed quietly from inside my jeans on the floor, but I didn't move. She stirred slightly, curling closer without waking, and I closed my eyes again, letting the silence take me under. That night hadn't been a mistake. It was a beginning. It didn't take long for what happened that night to become something more than just a one-time thing. At first, I thought maybe it was a moment we'd both pretend didn't happen, a single detour we'd quietly sweep under the rug. But the next time Isabel called, her voice was softer, familiar, and the words weren't about repairs or schedules. "I miss that calm you bring," she said. "Come tonight, don't bring tools." So I did. That visit turned into 2, then 4. Then I stopped counting. She never gave it a name. Neither did I. We didn't talk about what it was. We didn't try to label it. It was something we just returned to, like a place we both wanted to be, even if we couldn't stay there for long. Days passed like normal. Work, errands, sleep. But the nights became something else entirely. I get texts from her, always short, always coded. I open the wine. The lights are too bright again. Come distract me. They weren't love notes. They weren't flirty either. They were just signals, like she was reminding me we had something real in a world full of things that weren't. I never told anyone, not my friends, not my coworkers. When they asked where I was spending my evenings, I kept it vague. Working late, small job out of town, client needs some extra help. It wasn't just about protecting her. It was about protecting the version of myself I became around her. The version that didn't need to explain anything. There was something in the way she opened the door each time I arrived, barefoot, always with that same faint smile, like she'd been waiting for me but didn't want to admit it. Sometimes we'd talk for an hour before anything happened. Other times we wouldn't even make it past the living room. One night as I traced lazy circles on her shoulder, while we lay tangled in her sheets, she whispered, "You make me feel alive again." It hit harder than I expected. I didn't reply right away, just held her a little tighter. Later, while I was getting dressed, she stood by the window in a robe, watching the trees sway in the moonlight. She looked calm, but there was something behind her expression, like she was waiting for something she didn't want to ask for. "You okay?" I asked. She turned slowly and nodded. "Yeah, just remembering." I didn't press, but she wasn't the only one feeling it. The deeper I got into this, the more I realized I was building a double life. I'd leave her house at midnight, drive home in silence, and lie in bed thinking about the way she looked at me when she thought I wasn't paying attention. She was never careless, never overly affectionate in the way young couples might be. But there was intimacy in the small things. How she always made sure the wine was chilled just enough. How she kept a spare toothbrush for me in the guest bathroom. How she never let the sheets stay wrinkled for more than a day. It wasn't just physical. One night, while lying on the couch with her head on my chest, she said, "I think I stopped needing anyone for a long time. And then you showed up." I didn't know how to answer that, so I just ran my fingers through her hair and kissed the top of her head. "You're all I think about," I said quietly. She didn't react right away, just breathed in, slow and deep, like she was trying to hold the moment still. But we both knew the truth. This wasn't sustainable. The secrecy, the quiet moments stolen between our real lives, it was a bubble, and bubbles always pop. Still, neither of us wanted to talk about it, so we kept going, let the routine build itself, let the rules stay unwritten. Every night was a careful dance, me checking my phone before I walked in to make sure no one had texted, her double-checking the curtains were closed. Every kiss, every shared laugh over takeout, every whispered, "Stay a little longer," felt both thrilling and fragile. I didn't care what it meant anymore. I just knew I wanted to keep showing up, keep lying next to her in the dark, listening to her breathe, pretending the world outside didn't matter. Even if it couldn't last forever, I wasn't ready to let it go. Not yet. It was a Wednesday night when I noticed the watch. I just kicked off my boots near the entryway, like I always did, when something on the hallway table caught my eye. A black leather band, thick, masculine, resting casually beside her keys. I hadn't seen it before. It didn't match anything she wore. I tried not to think too much of it. Maybe it belonged to her brother or a friend. Maybe it was nothing, but the seed had been planted. That night felt different from the start. Isabel kissed me like always, slow and sure, but something in her body felt just a little more distant. Her mind wasn't in the room, not fully. We ate quietly, the conversation drifting in and out. No teasing, no playful remarks, just the sound of silverware on porcelain and the occasional nod. At one point I asked, "Everything okay?" She looked up, surprised, like she'd forgotten I was there for a moment. "Of course," she said. "Why wouldn't it be?" I hesitated. "Just feels like you're somewhere else tonight." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Long day, that's all." Later, while I was brushing my teeth in the guest bathroom, I saw a second toothbrush beside mine. Not new, not unused. That's when the silence started to feel louder than any words could. The next time I saw her, I tried to push the thoughts aside, tried to lose myself in the way her hands traced my shoulders, in the quiet gasps and slow rhythm we always fell into. But that night, everything felt more urgent, less like tenderness and more like escape. She clung to me, tighter, moved faster, kissed harder, like she was trying to drown something. Afterwards, she rolled onto her side with her back to me. No soft conversation, no whispered thoughts in the dark, just the sound of the sheets shifting and the distant hum of the ceiling fan. I stared at the ceiling, heart racing, thoughts spiraling. I wanted to ask, I wanted to say something, but the words didn't come. In the morning, I sat on the edge of the bed while she slipped into a robe and tied her hair back with quiet precision. Her movements were practiced, smooth. I finally asked, "Hey, who else is staying here?" She didn't look at me, just tied the knot at her waist a little tighter. "No one," she said. "Not really." I turned to her. "That's not a real answer." She paused, then met my gaze. Her face was calm, but there was something heavy in her eyes. "It's nothing that matters," she said. I let out a quiet breath, unsure whether to feel relieved or insulted. "Nothing that matters to who?" I asked. She sat on the arm of a nearby chair, crossing one leg over the other, arms folded loosely. "I told you once," she said, "I can't promise you more than this." "I know," I replied, "but it's hard pretending this doesn't feel like more." She looked down at her hands for a moment before speaking. "You're younger, Ethan. You think intensity means clarity, don't you? That one hurt. I didn't respond, just stood, pulled my shirt back on slowly, and tried to keep my expression neutral. I care about you, she said as I reached for the door, but I never said I was free. I nodded once, not trusting myself to speak. As I drove home, the road felt longer than usual. I played music just to have something else in my ears, but her voice echoed anyway. I can't promise you more than this. I tried to tell myself that nothing had changed, that we still had what we had. But deep down, I knew something had cracked. And cracks never stay small. They spread. I didn't plan on going over that night. In fact, I told myself I wouldn't after the watch, the toothbrush, the way her voice sounded just a little too calm when she said, "It's nothing that matters." But around evening, I was driving past her neighborhood, and without really deciding to, I turned down her street. It was instinct. Or maybe I just wanted proof. Proof that what I was feeling wasn't paranoia, that there was something real underneath the silence she wrapped herself in so well. As I approached the house, I saw it. A sleek silver car I didn't recognize parked in the driveway. Engine off, lights still warm. It wasn't there the last time I'd come, and it sure as hell wasn't mine. I pulled over across the street and sat in my truck for a moment, heart pounding. My hands tightened on the wheel, but I didn't move. Then I saw it, her silhouette behind the tall glass window near the stairs, and another one, a man's, taller, moving easily in her space, laughing. I couldn't hear them, of course, but I didn't need to. I stepped out of the truck, walked up the driveway like I had 100 times before, except this time my chest was tight, my steps unsure, my mind already spinning. I knocked. The door opened after a few seconds. She stood there wearing something casual, but her posture was stiff. She didn't smile. "Ethan," she said, her voice flat, "you shouldn't be here." Behind her, I heard the muffled sound of a man's voice calling her name. Not distant, not formal, familiar. She didn't step aside, didn't invite me in. She just looked at me like I'd interrupted something sacred. I opened my mouth, but no words came. I glanced past her shoulder. The man walked into view briefly, well-dressed, mid-40s, holding a glass of wine, like he belonged there. And maybe he did. My eyes returned to her. "So that's it?" I asked quietly. Her expression didn't change, but something in her eyes flickered. Shame, maybe, or guilt, or neither. "I told you," she said. "I can't offer you more than this." "This," I repeated. "You mean the version where I show up when you're lonely, then disappear before the lights come back on?" She didn't answer. I nodded slowly, heart pounding louder than the silence between us. "Right," I said. "I get it now." She reached out, just barely, like she wanted to soften the moment. But I stepped back. "You chose the part of me that didn't ask questions," I said. "And I chose to ignore the part of you that never gave answers." Still no response. So I walked away, back down the steps, across the driveway, into my truck. I didn't slam the door. I didn't peel away dramatically. I just sat there for a long moment before pulling out my phone. Her name sat at the top of my messages. Dozens of texts beneath it. Little moments. Short invitations. Midnight signals. I hovered over the screen. Then I deleted the thread. No hesitation. It was like a weight shifted in my chest the moment it disappeared. Driving home, the city felt quieter than usual. Or maybe it was just me. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. But I felt something close to grief, not because I'd lost her, but because I'd lost the version of her I thought I knew, the one I let myself believe in, the one who looked at me like I was more than just a secret. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her voice echoing in my head. "You make me feel alive again." I wondered if he made her feel that way too. But I didn't let that thought live long, because for the first time since this all started, I wasn't waiting for her text. I was listening to the silence. And for once, it didn't feel like a trap. It felt like freedom. The weeks after that night were quiet in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. Not the heavy, restless quiet of waiting for a text or wondering if I'd see her again. This was different. Still steady, like the noise had drained from my life and left only space behind. I filled it with work. I picked up more shifts, said yes to jobs I would have passed on before, patched drywall in some guy's garage, installed cabinet hinges for a retired couple, spent an entire day replacing window seals in a dusty old bungalow. None of it distracted me completely, but it helped, gave my hands something to do while my mind slowly stopped drifting back to her house, to her. I told my friends I'd been caught up with work, which wasn't a lie, but I didn't tell them why I'd suddenly stopped disappearing at night. I didn't tell them about Isabel, about how close I'd gotten to losing myself in someone else's life. I kept that to myself because in some strange way, it felt like I owed her that silence. But even in the stillness, she lingered, in moments I didn't expect. I'd be driving past the edge of town and see a house that reminded me of hers, the way the windows caught the light or the curve of a driveway lined with hedges. And just like that, the memories would flood in again. Her voice, her perfume, the way she'd whisper my name like it was something rare. I told myself it was just a phase, just a lesson. But the truth is, what we had was real. It might have been complicated, unspoken, hidden, but it was real. And you don't forget real things just because they end. One night I was cleaning out the pockets of a work jacket and found the little sticky note she'd once left me. It just said, "You calm the room." I held it for a minute, then folded it neatly and slid it into the back of my wallet, not to carry her with me, but to remind myself of the way I made someone feel. She once told me I made her feel alive again. But what I hadn't realized then was that she made me feel seen. Like maybe I was more than just a guy fixing things. Like I was worth pausing for. I think that's why it hurt so much. Not just because she was with someone else, but because deep down I thought maybe I was helping her fix something inside herself. And I wanted that to mean more than it did. But maybe I wasn't her answer. Maybe I was just the quiet space she needed between two louder parts of her life. There's a difference between being someone's choice and being their escape. Took me a while to understand that. One night, about a month after it ended, I woke up from a dream where I was back in her kitchen. The lights were dim, music playing, her barefoot on the tile floor again. Only this time she looked at me and said, "I'm glad you're free." I don't know what it meant, but when I woke up, I didn't feel sad. I felt ready. I started spending more time with the people I'd neglected, grabbing beers after work, actually answering texts, going on dates I used to dodge with lazy excuses. I didn't talk about Isabel. I didn't need to. She was a part of my story, a chapter that shaped me but didn't define me. Sometimes late at night, I still remember the way her sheets felt or the way she'd look at me when she thought I wasn't paying attention. I don't push those memories away. I let them come, let them fade. Because that's what happens with the right kind of pain. It stops stinging and starts teaching. She once told me, "I can't promise you more than this." Now I understand why. She wasn't built to stay. And maybe I wasn't meant to stay either. But I learned from her. I learned that wanting something deeply doesn't make it sustainable. That feeling seen is beautiful but not enough. And that love, real love, doesn't live in shadows. So I've stopped hiding. I don't answer midnight calls anymore. I don't pretend casual texts don't carry weight. I don't fall into the role of someone's secret. I'm not a placeholder. I'm not a pause. I'm someone who deserves to be part of the whole story, not just the parts that fit between someone else's rules. And when I finally let that truth settle inside me, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. The story of Ethan and Isabel is a poignant exploration of love's fleeting beauty and the painful clarity that comes with recognizing one's worth. Ethan, a 25-year-old repair technician, is drawn into Isabel's elegant, guarded world. A woman in her 40s whose quiet invitations and lingering glances pull him into a fragile, intoxicating connection. Their late-night dinners and whispered moments create a bubble of intimacy, but the discovery of another man shatters Ethan's illusion of exclusivity, teaching him a heart-wrenching lesson. True love cannot thrive in secrecy or half-truths. Isabel's words, "You make me feel alive again," lose their weight when Ethan realizes he was not her only escape from loneliness. This betrayal, though quiet, forces him to confront the difference between being someone's choice and merely their temporary solace. His journey from heartbreak to self-realization is deeply emotional, reminding us that real love demands openness, not shadows. Ethan's decision to walk away, to delete her messages and embrace the silence, underscores the courage it takes to choose oneself over a love that doesn't fully reciprocate. This story urges us to value our own worth, to seek relationships that honor us wholly, and to let go of connections that diminish us, no matter how intense they feel. It's a call to embrace the freedom that comes with knowing we deserve more than being someone's pause. If Ethan's journey from love to self-discovery touched your heart, share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to walk away from a love that wasn't fully yours? Hit the like button if this story resonated, and subscribe for more narratives that explore the raw beauty of human connection. Join our community to keep these stories alive. Let's find meaning in life's lessons together.